it just only keeps getting better and better and better. So I'm happy everybody's here. Happy Mr. Chapin's here. I want to do a little introduction before we go into his presentation. So welcome, Mr. Chapin. It's my honor to introduce Ross Chapin, who's an architect, neighborhood planner, and author based in Whidbey Island, Washington, north of Seattle, Washington. Since 1982, he's led a custom residential design and pocket neighborhood planning firm in the Pacific Northwest and throughout the United States. He's a passionate advocate for sensibly sized homes and socially scaled neighborhoods that nourish the individual, support household relationships, and foster a meaningful sense of community. So this pocket neighborhood movement is just changing the way we are envisioning what community is. Since 1997, Chapin has partnered in building these pocket neighborhoods that he'll talk about, and designed over 36 socially oriented design and pocket communities for developers across North America, many of which have received international media coverage, professional peer review, national design awards, including the American Institute of Architects Housing Awards. Chapin's work and ideas have been featured in more than 40 books and publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, AARP Bulletin, Forbes, Planning Magazine, the American Planning Association, Architectural Record, and Builder Magazine. His own book, Pocket Neighborhoods, Creating Small-Scale Community, Large-Scale World, has been widely read, and we can send that title up. It's widely available on Amazon and other presses. So in his home community in Washington, Chapin helped formulate the cottage housing development zoning ordinance, the first of its kind to be implemented in the United States. This ordinance has become a model for innovative housing codes, opening the way for small-scale communities like pocket neighborhoods within existing neighborhoods, as well as new developments to be thinking in this model that he'll be talking about. Projects by Chapin's firm in Washington State are often used to illustrate city or zoning ordinances and state and federal housing policy. It's also featured in state and housing policy papers. So you guys are in for a treat. It's my honor to introduce Ross Chapin, who will discuss pocket neighborhoods. Thank you, Mr. Chapin. Oh, and
all right. Hey, thank you so much. And I don't know if Don Jansen's on the call, but I got a call from him or an email from him a while back. And we've just had such a dynamic conversation, and I love what he is focused on for his work. And I understand that it's a central part of the Center for Communal Studies. So it's a thrill to be with you. I should have arranged being there. I had no idea that the eclipse was going on. I do some traveling around the country, but I've got so many projects going on that I need to stay close to home. I'm located on an island north of Seattle, and I've been here for quite some time. I grew up in Minnesota and in a small town north of St. Paul. My family goes back to the 1850s there. And the home that I grew up in now has its 5th generation in our family. And classic bungalow with a wraparound porch. And I mention this because for me, the sense of home and place was very much rooted in a home nested within a coherent neighborhood, surrounded by forests and other homes, of course, a creek, lake. It's Minnesota, of course. And that to me was very formative. When the woods behind our house, when I was in architecture school, the family estate basically sold it, and it became suburban sprawl. And it was devastating for me as a young person. And I have taken it on to really take a look at how do we create coherent, living, supportive community? And I've spent my life doing that. So let me jump into, unless there are any other questions starting out. And I will try to keep a watch on the chat. But if you've got anything, you can pass that along. I'm going to just start share screen here, just a minute. go. All right. So pocket neighborhoods designed, communities designed around human nature. I've focused the better half of my career on housing that supports well-being, healthy relationships, and supportive community. These I call pocket neighborhoods. One aspect of it is pocket neighborhoods. So like people clustered at a dinner table, small groups of neighbors can come together around shared space. And we'll get into that. So it's a pocket neighborhood is different than a neighborhood. A neighborhood might be several hundred houses. You might know some of your neighbors, but you're not going to know all of them. A neighborhood is known by its landmarks and its character. It's, you know, like the red house next to the park. In a pocket neighborhood, neighbors are on a first name basis. They're the first ones to notice a need or ask for help. They're the ones that you hang out with. Might be a next door neighbor that's off on vacation with her, you know, and her cat stays home. In a pocket neighborhood, her cat's fine. Or perhaps it's a mom, and she is maybe just arrived home from a grocery store, got the kids down, you know, after dinner for bed, and it's like, oh my God, I forgot my purse. In a pocket neighborhood, it's closely knit, and she can either have somebody cover her for her to go off, or have somebody to go off directly. Well, this fellow that I met, he was looking to get on a ladder to get up and repair something, and his next door neighbor came by and said, "Hey, Joe, no, this is for us to do. You can do other things." In most places, we've got public space and private street, and very little in between. In a pocket neighborhood, you've got an intermediate zone between the two. This is something that is public and private. It's both. In a shared commons, the nearby neighbors might offer nodding hellos, or they might stop for a chat, maybe on the porch or in the daily flow of life. The casual conversations grow into caring relationships, meaningful sense of community, fostered by the fact of shared space. Children are free range in the commons. An elder feels safe knowing that others are around. So if there's perhaps a tumble or anything happening, they'll know that they'll have others watching after them. The pocket neighborhoods are about pockets of nearby neighbors. That's the gist. And it's rooted in the fact of our human nature. We're sociable. We're social creatures. We love to chat. We love to tell stories, to reminisce, to argue, to laugh. In small groups, this is spontaneous. Now, these people are gathered at a table, but take a look at where the conversations are happening. You've got small groups on either side of you across the table. It might be a conversation with a whole group happening, maybe when, you know, we raise a toast to the birthday kid or whatever it is, but when it breaks up, then afterwards there's conversation that just happens. And the way in which it happens, the scale in which it happens is important. This is happening without effort. There's no planning. It just happens. Pocket neighborhoods are designed around this fact of our human nature. But take a look at what's happening across America. Subdivisions are built with the scale of economy the foremost. Scale of sociability is unheard of. As I've matured in my work, I've come to a deeper clarity about a core issue in our culture. The physical structure of our communities is slowly killing us. The American home is a standalone kingdom safeguarded from burglars and tied to the wider world by the automobile. Owners arrive home through garage doors, retreat to the family room, the private backyard. It's a way to get away. Meanwhile, the street out front has a no man's land with nobody looking on. Kids and dogs hold this community together, but kids move out and dogs die. Church groups and coffee meetups are great, but who's around to notice your curtain isn't open in the morning when it usually is? So here and there, slowly, quietly, unceasingly, threads are tearing the fabric of family and social bonds. Grown children settle in regions far from their parents. Young families may be struggling to keep up with the mortgage or rental payments and commuting and arranging childcare, chauffeuring kids to after-school events, monitoring internet activity, on and on and on. Families are not the only group who are vulnerable. Some people are single by choice or circumstance and in the same predicament. Elderly people often face retirement alone with limited resources. Loneliness has become an epidemic with dire circumstances in our culture. High blood pressure, alcoholism, accidents are more prevalent when social connections are cut. As are depression, anxiety, dementia, suicide, on and on. If it's not obvious yet, I've been advocating for more community. That's the answer. Now, for some people, this means co-housing and co-living and other variations. Add pocket neighborhoods to the mix. Others prefer living more independently with more separation. And still, it can happen within community. Everybody in community can have their right place. So I've taken a look at this, and I am seeing that there's a spectrum of sociability. So on one hand, you've got the home of one's own. It's a long-held desire. So imagine this within a walkable neighborhood. It might be an apartment. It might be a live above a garage. It might be a more secluded house. It's a place tucked away, but it's connected by choice to within a community. It might be walks with a dog at the coffee shop, at the gym. You're nested within a larger walkable community. Now, naturally sociable neighborhoods are neighborhoods with front porches or front stoops on a quiet street. Naturally, nodding hellos, chats, hanging out. It's effortless. There's no organization needed, no homeowners association, no dues, no fees, no commitments, no responsibilities. But we just show up. We're there, naturally sociable. Now, stepping further in the spectrum is what I call intentional neighboring communities. These are for people who want to be part of a more closely knit, intentional neighborhood. There's a strong community structure with shared agreements, tools for decision-making, resolving disputes, and for community life. Now, take this in another dimension is what I call caring communities. Similar to intentional neighboring communities, but include residents with extra needs, foster children, developmentally disabled people, elders, folks who want to live, and others who want to live within a caring community. So these are embedded within a surrounded, walkable community and with alternatives to institutional settings that sometimes would put elders and special needs people. Everyone has a place in community. So let's take a look at a range of pocket neighborhoods. These are more in the intentional neighboring dimension. Back in the 1990s, where I live in a small town, a lot of people were moving in, and the zoning basically prescribed garage-fronted homes with driveways, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, backyard, media room, and so forth. A lot of the people, in fact, more than 60% of the households in our town were 1- and 2-person households. And it's increased to almost 2/3 right now. And so what I did was to work with the planner and work with the planning advisory board to come up with a zoning code that gave incentives to do twice the number of homes on any group of lots, any lot, if several factors came into place. One, they're small, less than 1,000 square feet. They've got a shared commons at its heart, and parking is tucked away. So after this happened, I set up a development company, and we set out to build this. And this worked with 4 lots. We have 8 cottages. It's about 2/3 of an acre, 0.6 acres. Everyone has a room-sized porch, fences, private yards, buffers of personal space and public. The porches are not key fumbling porches. These are porches that are wonderful for living in for much of the year. Of course, not during the cold months and so forth. But boy, when the sun comes out in February and it comes onto the porch, this is really special. We are coming to the workshop here. Down below, this is a little bit of a rough and tumble spot, concrete floor, south-facing windows for shelves for seedlings in the spring, and a workbench for fixing stuff, and a table to gather at. There have been birthday parties, there have been hangouts here. We got a wood stove from a farmer and put that in. And up above is a rooftop terrace, which is covered. It's got a barbecue right there, and it looks out over the surrounding area. Another project that we did is in Kirkland. This is about 4 miles from the Microsoft headquarters. We wanted to show that a communal sense of living would be appealing. And we created another code for Kirkland, Washington, that said, okay, for homes that are 1,500 square feet, larger homes, 1.5 times the underlying density if they're located around a shared commons and parking is tucked to the side. So size limited, a little bit larger, and communal settings. So with this one, we've got 16 homes. And within the homes, you'll see these are the sociable groupings. You've got a group of 10 and a group of 6 connected by a walkway. And at in the commons, the shared, we've got a lovely commons building, a 4-season building with a large room to meet in, a kitchenette, bathroom. The family that moved into the house on the left, there's a 15-year-old girl, and very soon she and her friends took over the common building in the evenings for homework night with girlfriends. And lots of activities every week happening out in the terrace. And this has been really very alive. Looking back, you'll see the common area, which we have as a lawn. The family that owned it had a flagpole, and he raised the flag every day. And we were able, because pocket neighborhood planning is the way it works is far more flexible. And we're able to save, I think, 70% of the trees on the site and tuck them around, and we could tuck parking in because in this case, it's secluded from the home. You walk from the garage through the gardens to your front door. This is one of the larger homes, not a large yard, but enough people can really have something satisfying. And then you've got the shared commons. This is one of the smaller homes. When we were presenting this to the planning or to the neighborhood group, there's a woman that came up. She was probably in her 80s, and she was quite upset because she's saying all these developers come in and they just take out what I've known for 40 years in the neighborhood, and they put up these oversized homes, and I don't want any of it. And besides that, my daughter wants me to move to an elder home, and I don't want that. I want to stay. And her name was Betty Lou, and I told her, I said, I actually love making small homes, cottages, and maybe there can be something for you here. And so we designed this home. It's 700 square feet, accessible on the main level, and we named it the Betty Lou. Unfortunately, Betty Lou never showed up. I have no idea what became of her. But there was a woman with MS, and she and her friends put together the front yard of this little cottage with gardens. We did another version, 2 bedrooms, and we call this building plan the Betty Lulu. Joan lived out in the suburbs in about a 3,500 square foot house. And when her husband passed away, she didn't feel safe. 2.5 acres, they, in their years, they prided that they didn't see any neighbors. Well, as she was getting old, she just felt unsafe. So she bought a home here. And here she is walking with some of her um, items from the store to her home. Not all of the homes we have separated parking, but this we did. And so Joan, the first Thanksgiving, she had all her family over. She had one of the 1,500 square foot homes. And the day after Thanksgiving, she's making turkey soup. And she choked on a bone. I mean, like, couldn't even breathe, couldn't yell out. She ran out to her porch, panicked. And across the court was a woman sitting on her porch looking over and just dashed over. And she had some training and she could see what was happening with Joan and immediately pulled out the bone. And Joan recovered. She was sitting on her front step and she was crying. She said, if I hadn't moved here, this would have been my last Thanksgiving. So, here I am, I'm thinking as an architect, as a designer, all the positive, great things about living in community. I didn't realize that this would save a life. It's the kind of thing that can happen in a place like this. So this is a project that is under construction in south of Missoula, Montana. And it started out with a group, the Council on Aging, and they've been helping people age in their own homes. And then they realized that people at some point really don't want to live out on a ranch somewhere or in isolation. They want to live in community. And so they contacted me, and then we took some land that was donated to them. And it's it's right in town. This is a busier street. And they put in this is their existing offices with a Meals on Wheels kitchen and a bus barn to help deliver those and do paratransit for elders. And they had put in a cul-de-sac, and then they came to me and said, what do we do? So we continued that, and then we took a look at having lanes and having a series of pocket neighborhoods with homes that would be family homes, single level homes, mixed generations, but definitely serving elders. Along with that, there's a place for assisted living, both memory care and the other. And in the sense of a pocket neighborhood, this is a group of maybe 10 to 12 suites around a shared common area with a neighborhood common house. And then we've got a community workshop. We've got shops for personal and health services, a cafe. And along with that, a neighborhood works really best when it has quite a web of walking ways. So you can walk around the center court, you can walk around your pocket, you can walk around the whole neighborhood group. And then this connects up to regional neighborhoods. They're regional trails, which is really fantastic. So this is the pattern of what a coherent neighborhood can look like. A closer view of the buildings. In this case, we've got a combination of attached parking and detached parking, but everybody has a garage. This is the initial modeling showing the various different pockets. You've got single level living with bedrooms on the main level. You've got porches engaging the shared area, and then you've got a back porch as well to open out to. This is the assisted living, where you see 10 suites coming together around shared areas. So this is, in between, is trying to be home-like and not institutional. And I think scale has everything to do with it. Again, pocket neighborhood is about the scale of sociability. So there are a number of ways in which community comes together and is supported. Um, and along with community are the needs for privacy. So these are the 9 key design patterns that are relatively universal. Every site has their own particular set of patterns and ways in which it comes together. But I think we can take a look at some things larger. As we talked about, the first one is the scale of sociability. Um, Groups of houses that would be um, just enough. If you had 40 or 50 around the park, it shifts that. You'd end up having these subgroupings of nearby neighbors, maybe on this end of the park. So they'll naturally sort of break up, but we're trying to design it around that. Here's a community that we built around a shared commons. This is 2 lots. We did 8 homes. This is a suburban, uh, probably a 1950 subdivision with 3/4 acre lots. So large lots. This has become quite a dense area through here. Now up in British Columbia, we're working with 20 acres, most of which is preserved, and we developed a series of 21 homes in pockets with a shared common area, community garden, and then they open up their community building to the wider neighborhood. So there's a way in which the people in the wider neighborhood can come in and park. So it's a coherent sense of within your own cluster, but then there's a sense of coherence within the larger grouping. This is a project that's under construction in near Indianapolis, and it's organized in a series of pockets. In this case, given the ice and snow that happened there, everybody can enter in through a rear lane garage, while the front of the home opens onto the commons, which is perpendicular on most of these, perpendicular to the street. Rallying the cars. Too often, we live by cars. They're important, but cars dominate. So if possible, find ways in which we can, maybe you walk from the car door through a garden to your front door. Maybe you are part of, here's a lane that we did where on the left are garages, on the right is open parking, but we put the mailboxes here. The common building is here. And so this lane becomes a place, sure there are cars, but it's a people place as much as anything. Shared commons. This is the heart of a pocket neighborhood. It's what holds it together. It gives it vitality. We talked about it being, it's neither private, like a home or a yard, or it's not public, like a street or a park. It's a semi-private space between private and public realms. People want to just gather around a fire, around a common building. So another set of patterns, what are there buildings that you could have? Well, it might be, if you can afford it, a larger building for potlucks and exercise groups and movie nights. This is a co-housing group in Denver, and they've got a huge commons building. But here's one where they have no common building at all. They've got a place for tools, and they've also got an outdoor place to hang out around the fire. This is the commons, part of the commons world that holds it together. Now, how many lawnmowers do you need in a pocket neighborhood? How about one? And rakes and shovels and supplies and so forth. So we created a little garden shed, community garden. Who doesn't enjoy growing food? You enjoy growing food, you enjoy growing community at the same time. This one might be a little hard at first. A lot of planners and architects and developers take on pocket neighborhoods, and they forget that what's most important, one of the most important things is to have layers of personal space. Community is great, but too much community can be suffocating. but too much privacy, you can feel isolated, cut off. So we create layers. So between this woman walking on the sidewalk, which is already in the commons, it's layered in from public, you've got a low hedge, a fence which really serves to demarcate the private yard. You could step over that if you had to, need to. So private yard is the second. The porch, because the porch is lower than 28 inches off the ground, you don't need a railing, but we put a railing in as another layer. And the railing is not 36 or 42 inches high. It's just high enough if you want to, perch a cup of coffee or to just perch your bum while you're hanging out chatting with your neighbor, not for a long time. And then the room of the porch. And then within the home, you've got the door. Because you're not facing the wilderness, you can have a door that would be more like a Dutch door, where the top of it can open and the bottom of it can close. So you've got a number of ways in which you can have this open and closed. So here you can see these 5 layers again, up to the door itself. This is perhaps an anti-pattern. This was an early copy of A Pocket Neighborhood, and I walked in and out, oh my God, I felt like I was invading their world. There were no layers. It felt like I was coming on. There's no railing. In fact, look at the so-called porch on the far pic in the in the yellow house. They're storing their garbage there. There's hardly a room in the near house to gather. It's great they've got a little spot to sit, but it's missing the layers. The layers continue inside the house too. On the left, you've got the common area, and on the left of the home, you've got the more active living spaces: the porch, the living room, kitchen, dining room, and farther back, you've got the bedroom, den, bathrooms. And the side yard goes from more public to a more private garden retreat in the back. So you've got privacy, you've got space. A room-sized porch, not a key fumbling porch, not something to sort of like, dress up the house because it's too boxy, but a real living porch that welcomes people, that is a joy to sit on and watch the world go by. So here we have supposedly layerings and porches. This porch, there's a community in Seattle that took on the cottage code, and they said that the porch needed to be 80 square feet. All right, well, this is whatever that is. It's 12 feet by 4 feet, or 16 feet by 4 feet, whatever. It's not usable with a railing that is like, oh my God, it's deadly. And that I don't know what that picket fence is. So just to understand the notion of what layering is about, what room-sized porches are about. Privacy can happen in a big way with nested homes. If you've got, you open up your window in the morning and you've got your neighbor opening up their window looking at you, it's uncomfortable, it's claustrophobic. Or maybe there's a kitchen looking back into a bedroom. It happens. A builder says, hey, this is the best-selling plan. Plunk, 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 plop, plop. And it's not in context. It's not in context with what's around it. With this home to the south, there are windows, bay windows, the porch. And on the north side, there are no windows. Skylights to bring light in and windows to look out to the commons, but the side yard goes right up to the face of the home. And the property line is 5 feet away, and there's an easement that allows the salmon-colored house to use the yard up to the face of the building. So they can be much tighter, but still privacy is preserved. Eyes on shared space. When you've got a 4-year-old who naturally wants to head out and explore the world, their horizon can expand in community because they've got eyes around, looking around. Or maybe there's somebody coming in that's a stranger, and when they're coming in, they're going to feel like oh, they're on notice, So it helps create a protected territorial space. This also includes lanes. I've been around some communities where they've got great common space, but they come through this long set of garage doors that with nobody looking on. And if I'm coming home from work late at night, getting into the parking and walking out in that space, that may not feel comfortable to me. So here's where to find out more. I've got a website, two websites. The rosschapin.com highlights the work that I've been doing over the years. And then we've taken the Pocket Neighborhood, everything about it, and put it onto its own website. I put together a book about a dozen years ago. I was thrilled last month when I found out that it was number 16 on Amazon books for urban planning and design. Oh my God, after 12 years now. So it continues to be a perennial book. So a lot of the stories, the history of pocket neighborhood planning across the world, to a degree, is in there. Australia, Europe. I found so many more since then in doing the research. And it gets into more of the nuance of the things that can't be done in this short book. So that's it for the presentation, and I'm looking forward to conversation and where do you want to go from here?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chapin, for that presentation. Thank you. I did want to acknowledge some people helped make this possible, so I appreciate Don Jansen for making this contact for us, but I want to thank the Center for Communal Studies, Dr. Sylvia Rode, College of Liberal Arts, the Bronstein Center for Healthy Aging and Wellness, Katie Elman is here, the Center for Nursing Health Professions. Thank you for all those who made this event possible. So we're going to have some questions that have some in the chat rooms, and so I had the first one. So that one near Indianapolis, is that the pocket neighborhood in Zionsville, Inglewood?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, and you so that's very interesting. I didn't know it had a name, and I visited about 4 years ago when it was being built, but sort of gave us the inspiration, at least sort of for me, sort of my interest in pocket neighborhoods sort of came from that visit and reading your book too. So
yeah.
so that's
I worked on the site planning. I've done a lot of the buildings. I wish that I was involved during construction and a number of things. So I'm very excited, very proud about it, but I'm also seeing some of the things when it gets built, some of the nuance that is missed now and then. To me, it's not nuance, like some of the key patterns are really critical. So anyway, yeah.
So we do have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one that I'm seeing is from Janet. Says everything that you advocate makes so much sense. It's so frustrating to see new neighborhoods being built with no regard to pocket neighborhood principles. I live in Greenville, South Carolina. How can we encourage the creation of pocket neighborhoods in our community?
So is there a question in that? I'm trying to.
How can we encourage the creation of pocket neighborhoods in our community?
Okay, how can we encourage? Got it. Well, some of it has to do with letting folks know, and that might be at the with the planning board, because they're the ones that shape the zoning which allow this to happen. In a lot of communities, you can do this, but you really need to do kind of the work around. It needs to be a planned unit development, which gives you more flexibility. There may be particular codes that you can use. The other one is to talk about it within your own circles, bring it up at builder groups and saying, hey, I've seen this. I'd really love to have this as an option in our community. And a lot of it is getting the word out. The pattern that we have, the prevailing pattern doesn't acknowledge, as I mentioned in the slideshow, it doesn't acknowledge closer to our human nature. It's more designed around uh, making money, and we need to be economic. We need to have homes that are affordable, but that doesn't have to come at the expense of having coherent neighborhoods.
Another question in the chat from Trent Embers. I'd be interested to hear about how the pocket neighborhoods get managed. What does collective problem solving look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, listen, we've been looking at the physical environment, talking about the zoning, the building, the patterns of the physical environment. Whenever I work with a group or a developer, I say, well, one of the first things to do is to bring in a person who's got skills with convening people and groups, facilitator, and bring them on early to maybe help with the visioning. Bring them on once it's being built to put it out, to communicate what's going on, what this is about. This isn't just a cute little house. This is a house in a coherent neighborhood. And when the residents begin to come together, bring them together and through potlucks, and then how to set the culture of community in the meetings. There is a shared commons, and so there's shared responsibilities. I like to think, let's bring the management down to the nearest level, smallest level possible. Give the care and the management of commons to the residents themselves, not to hiring out to some landscape company. Maybe they do the heavy lifting. Maybe once a year they come in and do that. But when you're out there, maybe doing, the weeding the hedge or pruning the tree or things like that, that's where the conversations happen. That's where the connections happen. Now, disputes come up. Dogs, noise, kids. Some people are like to live neat and tidy, and other people are like, hey, life is good. Let's be at ease. Don't be so uptight. We've got different lifestyles. And how do you then resolve disputes amicably, respectfully, with care? And when you've got a culture of community that knows how to take in the various different viewpoints and to resolve, you're resolving it at, again, the lowest level, the closest level possible, rather than shipping your complaints off to some management company or, in some neighborhoods, if something's going wrong, you call the police. And so there's a disconnect between the levels of scale. You've got your house and you've got the wider world, and there's nothing in between. And when you've got multiple layers of your home, your nearby neighbors, and you've got ways in which you can work with making choices, decisions, disputes, and having life happening, the barbecue. Somebody's getting a grill fired up at the end of the day, and pretty soon, somebody's bringing out something else to the grill, and it happens. These happens because you've got these different layers of scale. You bring it close. So there is an HOA often, but they're not huge. They're small scale HOAs, and community is at the heart of it. So I don't want to belabor this, but a metaphor that I sometimes use is that the physical environment would be like the hardware, and the life of the community would be the software or the apps. And the people moving in, they're not interested in what's under the hood of their computer. How does it serve me? How can I use it? Can I play with it? So a community isn't just the physical environment, it's also the social environment. And it takes some skills to really make that healthy and alive.
It seems like you answered Hillary's question here, how are common spaces maintained and are there HOAs? So we'll move on to the next one. Tracy Pace asked, what is the average square footage or acreage to cover a pocket neighborhood of 7 to 8 houses with a common building and a central green space?
Okay. This is a good question. First of all, know that pocket neighborhoods are not necessarily about small houses. They might be, but it's about the small number of homes in a pocket. So if you've got 16 or 20 homes, you've got maybe 2 pockets. So the average square footage, the acreage to cover a pocket neighborhood of 7 to 8 homes. That's going to be, you can typically get 6 to 10, maybe 12 homes to the acre. So if you've got 7 to 8, I'd say look for a site that would be about an acre. And when you find that site, or when you're looking, one of the challenges of a pocket neighborhood is that by nature, it's inward looking. Well, what happens if you're on a street that you really want to have as a really lovely, engaged street? And I've seen people do a pocket neighborhood, and they basically have houses that turn the backside with nobody looking onto the street. So it's a challenge design-wise to connect and contribute to the street while also connecting and orienting toward the shared commons. Just to finish that, the smallest that I would probably take a look at would be maybe a third of an acre. 2/3 of an acre is quite lovely. An acre works. Once you get to 2 acres, then there's either more common space or it begins to break up into other groupings. When I had developers come to me and said, "Oh, I love this. I've got 20 acres or 30 or 40 acres." I went, "Oh my God, what do I do?" And I then realized how the larger pattern of development comes together while the sociable clusters continue their scale.
Another question we have from Edward Diaz is, do you think a pocket site plan would work in a working farm development?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, that's just, that's ideal. I'm working with a group in Hilo, Hawaii. It's part of an old foundation plantation. And there is a 75-acre parcel. And the owner wants to find ways in which the community, it can give back to the community. So they need to create farm worker housing, community-oriented housing that's affordable, and have kitchen gardens, community gardens, market gardens, having groupings of small farm groups coming together on those. And there's a variety of home types oriented around food and food growing. And the commons has a public component to it. So you've got not only the market, but you've got a way in which you can take the basic food, and create into value-added products. Working farms, I think, give a really special opportunity.
Our next question is from Diana Matthews. I'm interested on how you manage keeping the residential units occupied by like-minded people who value the concept of pocket neighborhoods.
Great question. Great question. The first one that we saw, it's the poster child for pocket neighborhoods. It's really lovely. And we were careful to filter the people that were purchasing it. We were out there when people would coming through, and we wouldn't try to sell it. We would help people understand it and find whether it's right for them, and they make the choice. And it came together. They were really a wonderful, tight community. But what happened in the years later is that they would sell, and a realtor would come in. And this is the cutest darn little cottage that you could ever come across. Oh my God. And being Whidbey Island, it attracts people who can afford second homes and third homes. And so it began to have second and third home buyers. And they're coming in maybe once a month, and they use the cottage with their family, and they're sitting out in the front porch with their times. and there might be something that needs to be done in the commons. And they will say, sure, how much? Let's hire out for that. Meanwhile, Anne, who's a retired librarian at the other end of the commons, is she's on a very fixed income, and she loves gardening, and she has a pretty tight community. And they had a values clash. And over the years, sadly, that it's bifurcated into the second and third homeowners and the small households that are living together in a pretty tight community. So that's why I think it's important to really be intentional, to name what is the community, what is it about, and to have, here are the 4 or 5 ways in which we're coming together, and to keep remembering that. And so find ways when they resell that there's maybe a period of time in which maybe for the first 30 days, it goes out to friends of the community, or it goes out through word of mouth. And when it goes out into the realtor market, make it really clear with the realty people. This is a pretty this is a neighborhood, not a house. It's a house within a neighborhood. And the push toward house as real estate, house as investment, is part of what's going on, in our world. And this is trying to find the other dimension where house is not a dwelling unit, it's a home. We encourage the people who purchase the homes to name their home. I grew up in the house by the lake before there were addresses. No, I wasn't there before there were addresses, but before the address numbers came in long ago, every house had a name. And so I grew up in a neighborhood where every house had a name. And a house with a name is not a commodity. It's got personality, and you relate to the others around it in the same way. So, and I've spent all these years since then trying to bring this sense of this other dimension of, it's a bit challenging to live in community. It's a bit challenging to uphold something. It's kind of like saying, great, we got married happily ever after, without realizing that relationship takes some work, takes some skills, and it needs help with those around us to uphold the best, even while we're going through some challenges.
And one of our last questions here is from Patsy Davenport. There's a big emphasis today on the housing crisis and lack of middle housing. What solutions would you see that is addressed in pocket neighborhood development to make them more affordable?
Yeah. I'm guessing your world is, housing prices are going up. On Whidbey Island, oh my God, about 5 years ago, I realized no matter how well thoughtfully I can design a pocket neighborhood, design homes, it's not possible to build a home that a teacher can afford, that a business owner can afford. Not just the barista and the landscape people, but people earning moderate incomes that are providing essential services to the community. They can't afford a home here. I hate to. Okay, so lot prices for 50 by 100 are going for more than $300,000 per lot. The buildings, the average building price on the island last month was $800,000. That's like, huh? It's not possible. So, well, first of all, I would say keep it simple, keep the building form simple. Beyond that, I think we need partners. And I've been looking at the community land trust model to help come in and maybe do a community land trust market model. So you've got a combination. A community land trust takes the land out of speculation into the community, holding it in trust. So a person coming in purchases a home that they can afford, which is about 1/3 of their income. And in exchange, for getting a home that is affordable, they say, okay, you can sell this, but at a limited equity. So every year it might be 2% or 3% increase, not following the market of up and down, but it's that. And the gap between the cost of the house and the price of the house is covered by tax monies, by grants, by various different affordable housing incentives, and by local philanthropic folks, people who got the means, who say it's really important to have homes for everyone in our community, and I want to support that. So that could be an entire conference on that question, but it's one that I'm leaning into, and I could expand that out into many more stories. But it's a real challenge.
We have until 1:30, right?
Yeah, you reached. Yeah, I think we do.
1:30. So we're coming up on time. Is there anything else that we want to add? Sylvia, Matt, do you have anything else? Anyone in here have questions?
Anybody have any questions?
So our Pocket Neighborhood site has a lot of information on it. There are videos, there are papers that have been presented, lots of examples. You can certainly learn more there. The Facebook page for Ross Chapin Architects, we're often posting not just our own things, but things we come across. And so that's a venue to look at. The Pocket Neighborhood website, pocketneighborhoods.net, also has a series of blogs that take various different topics and go into more depth on them. If you've got questions, pitch them over to me. I'll do my best to follow up and answer. But this has been a real pleasure for me.
This has been great. Anybody else have any other comments or questions or? This was good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Some of us in the Evansville community have been thinking about the community land trusts as a solution towards taking land off the speculators, off the tax rolls, and just it's a great sort of vehicle for solving some of our affordable housing challenges. So I'm glad you focused on that. So
yeah,
that's good. We may go up and see the Zionsville development. I think we heard there's one in Bloomington as well, which is a little bit south of Indianapolis, but north of Evansville.
Yeah, and I'm right now working with a group east of Lexington, Kentucky.
Sure.
And they started in wanting a pocket neighborhood, and it's expanded out to, it's a small town of about 1,200 people. And it's really a pretty sad case of once lively town is just really down in its luck. And so we're working with a group in Cincinnati to revitalize the entire town. And there'll be, to start with, along with that, a couple of pocket neighborhoods that we'll be designing and helping build.
What's the town?
Millersburg, Kentucky.
Sure.
It's so tiny, I'm sure you probably haven't heard about it.
And if you're ever around in this area, please come drop by USI and we show you the farming.
I'd love to come by. I've looked at the Google about the history of New Harmony, and I've been hearing about it, Googled it, explored it.
Do you have anything to say, Sylvia? You go.
Hey, thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. For us, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, very good, very good.